Good afternoon. It's Monday, the 9th of March. I'm Erin Viner, and this is IBA News broadcasting from Jerusalem. We open with breaking news of the arrests of 4 suspects connected to the terror attack at the kosher supermarket in Paris on January 9th. One of those arrested is reportedly a French policewoman. All 4 are believed to have ties with Mehdi Koulibaly, who killed 4 people during the siege before he was fatally shot during a gunfight with security forces. In other news, officials from the International Atomic Energy Agency are holding talks with officials in Tehran today ahead of the upcoming deadline for a framework deal on the country's nuclear program between Iran and 6 major world powers. The United Nations Nuclear Watchdog Organization says that issues related to the P5+1 framework agreement will be discussed during the one-day meetings, and that the Islamic Republic has yet to address specific topics, thus feeding suspicions that it may have researched the manufacturing of atomic weapons, including the testing of explosives and neutron calculations. Iran is rejecting those accusations as baseless. And meanwhile, Iran has unveiled a new cruise missile capable of carrying either nuclear or conventional warheads with a range of 2,500 kilometers. The new rocket enables the rogue nation to hit targets throughout the Middle East, as well as in Eastern and Southern Europe. The commander of the Revolutionary Guard's Aerospace Force, Brigadier General Amir Ali Hajizadeh, spoke out at the breakout ceremony in Tehran yesterday, as did Iranian Minister of Defense Hossein Degan, who claims that the new weaponry stands out from other missiles because of its superior precision capabilities over a long distance. Washington is reportedly making efforts to calm tensions with Jerusalem over the Tehran nuclear issue. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and U.S. President Barack Obama both addressed the issue on CBS Face the Nation, the televised program. Obama raised doubts that an agreement will be reached with Iran, while Netanyahu confirmed that Israel has stepped back from an earlier demand.
There is enormous suspicion between the Iranian regime and the world, not just the United States. The Iranians have negotiated seriously because we were able to bring them to the table through some of the toughest sanctions that have ever been put in place. We have made progress in narrowing the gaps, but those gaps still exist. And I would say that over the next month or so, we're going to be able to determine whether or not their system is able to accept what would be an extraordinarily reasonable deal if, in fact, as they say, they are only interested in peaceful nuclear programs. And if we have unprecedented transparency in that system, if we are able to verify that, in fact, they are not developing weapon systems, then there's a deal to be had, but that's going to require them to accept the kind of verification and constraints on their program that so far, at least, they have not been willing to say yes to.
The activity of the Secretary of State and his counterparts suggests to a lot of people, particularly, I guess, the Israelis, that a deal is imminent.
I think it is fair to say that there is an urgency because we now have been negotiating for well over a year. And the good news is that during this period, Iran has abided by the terms of the agreement. We know what's happening on the ground in Iran. They have not advanced their nuclear program. We've been able to roll back their 20% highly enriched uranium during this period of time. It's given us unprecedented access into what they are doing. So we're not losing anything through these talks.
And you've said that if there's no deal, you're willing to walk away. That's it.
Absolutely. If there's no deal, then we walk away. If we cannot verify that they are not going to obtain a nuclear weapon, that there's a breakout period so that even if they cheated, we would be able to have enough time to take action. If we don't have that kind of deal, then we're not going to take it.
The president told Bill Plant he will walk away from any deal if it does not include more stringent inspections than the Iranians have already agreed to. Is that good enough?
Well, I respect President Obama. I expressed appreciation in my speech in Congress, as I do now, for the many things that he's done for Israel. We share the same goal of preventing Iran from getting a nuclear weapon, but we disagree on how to do it. I do not trust inspections with totalitarian regimes. It didn't work with North Korea. They violated it and played a good game of hide and cheat. It didn't work with Iran. They've cheated and bamboozled inspectors. They, under the nose of inspectors, they built 2 underground bunkers that they didn't know about, the inspectors didn't know about, and we, the intelligence agencies of the US, Israel, Britain, didn't know about for years. So I'd be a lot more circumspect. In fact, what I'm suggesting is that you contract Iran's nuclear program so there's less to inspect.
Well, do you trust the president to make the right decision on this?
I think this is not an issue, a personal issue. It's not one of trust. It's a matter of survival, really, and the deepest security issues for the state of Israel, I think for the security of the Middle East, for the security of the world, and also for the United States. We can have, obviously, differing perspectives, but I chose to bring out what I thought would be a better deal. I think the current proposal, as I understand it, enables Iran to have a vast nuclear infrastructure, which means a very short breakout time to the bomb. And secondly, it lifts the restrictions after a decade. It just lifts all the restrictions on Iran, and it could have an arsenal of many, many nuclear bombs. Plus, they're continuing to developing the intercontinental ballistic missiles to deliver that arsenal any place on Earth, including the United States of America. I think there's a better deal. The better deal is to increase the breakout time, to limit Iran's infrastructure. And secondly, to condition the lifting, link the lifting of restrictions on Iran's nuclear program in the future to a change in Iran's behavior, to have it stop instigating aggression against its neighbors, worldwide terrorism that it's doing, and to have them stop threatening the annihilation of Israel. I think that's a better deal.
In the wake of reports that Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei is gravely ill, potential candidates are already gearing up to succeed him. Iranian affairs expert Menashe Amir told IBA's Aria O'Sullivan that he sees little chance of a nuclear agreement being achieved and predicts that the hardline Islamic Republic will try to extend the negotiations past the upcoming deadline for a final agreement.
You have to take into consideration that the spiritual leader, he's an absolute ruler of Iran. He has all the power, and he can decide whatever he wants. Of course, he has to consider the pressures of the Revolutionary Guards and other parts of the regime, but in practice, he has all the power, and it will be very meaningful about the future of Iran.
So right now there's negotiations going on. The Secretary of State Kerry says that we are in the last mile for the next 2 weeks are very crucial. And from what you can tell, is France and the United States on the same page with this regarding Iran?
Yes, more or less. Kerry said that we are in the last mile, but I think that there will be much more miles during the summer and afterward, because I'm sure, according to my assessment, there is no chance to reach the agreement neither in the end of March nor in the end of June, and they will decide. There will be no agreement, and then they will decide to extend the negotiations. That's my assessment.
Well, what's happening in Iran? Is there any pressure? We don't see any sort of protests like there were a few years ago. Is the regime stable?
It is and it is not. We have seen what happened in Tunisia and Egypt and other countries. It may have an upheaval in 1 day and 1 hour. But the Iranian people are very much angry about the regime. They hate this regime. But and there have been many strikes and demonstrations of the people who demand their own rights. And the Iranian economic situation is very bad. Iran is on the edge of bankruptcy, and there are all the conditions for having the next Iranian revolution is already in. But the Iranian people are waiting the best occasion to wage their hate and their activity to overthrow the regime.
Turning now to the national elections, and the Zionist Union has unveiled its political platform, presenting two main goals: to end the nation's diplomatic isolation and curb the rise of housing prices. Meanwhile, a campaign is being launched calling for respectful dialogue between candidates. IBA's Ellie Wogelenter has more.
Zionist Union's 40-page platform aims at setting the permanent borders of Israel if party leader Isaac Herzog forms the next government. The document proposes demilitarization of a Palestinian state, keeping the settlement blocks in Judea and Samaria under Israeli sovereignty, preserving Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, and guaranteeing religious freedom and access to the holy places of all religions while maintaining Israeli sovereignty. Herzog mocked the Likud for lacking any platform on any issue, saying Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has no platform and doesn't give answers. The only platform that matters is the platform of a prime minister, so only our platform matters. In response, Likud MK Yuli Edelstein said his party's views are known on key issues like education, welfare, and the housing crisis, and that his party gives a better answer than those who publish hundreds of pages when they don't know what portfolios they will have afterward. Meanwhile, another election campaign has been launched, but this one is not coming from the political parties, but is aimed at them. The Gesher organization released its 10 commandments for the elections to promote respectful dialogue between candidates. The 10 commandments include respect candidates, be tolerant and patient, act responsibly, be a role model, don't be aggressive, don't incite, don't be divisive, don't disregard, be authentic and accountable, and argue the issue, not the person. The Gesher video shows candidates complimenting politicians on opposite sides of the political spectrum. Yesh Atid leader Yair Lapid, seen by many Haredim as anti-religious, tells Shas MK Itzik Cohen that he is a decent and good person who knows how to cross the aisle in the Knesset and say, here is a good idea, let's work on this together. And Bayit Yehudi MK Ayelet Shaked tells MK Sheli Yachimovich of Zionist Union, I truly respect you, you're always honest and matter of fact, and say what you think. I'm happy there are people like you in the Knesset. With a week to go until Election Day, we'll see if the Respect campaign can sustain itself. Eli Wogelanter, IBA News.
Joining me now in the studio to discuss the elections is Jerusalem Post political reporter Gil Hoffman. Hi, Gil. Thanks for coming in.
Pleasure.
Okay, so until now, the race has been just way too close to call, but most polls now have the Zionist Union pulling ahead of Likud. Is that how you're saying it?
That's what the Jerusalem Post poll on Friday had, which was actually very surprising. People thought that the speech in Congress would help Netanyahu politically a lot. In the past 6 years, every time he sparred with Barack Obama, it has helped him out politically. And this time, it didn't work. I don't know if that was the goal or maybe one of the goals, but there were 2 seats behind last time and there are 2 seats behind now.
Now, you know President Reuven Rivlin pretty well. Do you believe that he's going to tell the head of the largest party that gets the most amount of votes to go ahead and form a coalition government, or is he going to wait and see who has the most backing from the smaller parties?
Okay, well, let's start with the law. The law says that it doesn't matter which is the largest faction, it doesn't matter which is the largest bloc, it doesn't matter which party gets the most recommendations. The president can choose any party leader he wants to form a government. It is entirely at his discretion. Now, to answer your question about him and his personality, he's a believer in unity, and I believe that he will push for Netanyahu and Herzog to run the country together, and he's made that clear in closed conversations in recent days.
So you think he will advocate and he will urge these parties to make a unity government, Zionist Union and Likud? Is there any chance of that happening?
The most likely scenario is indeed in one form or another. I don't know if there will be a rotation or not, but the Likud and Zionist Union and the ultra-Orthodox parties forming a government together, and Kahlon as well.
It would seem that anybody who's going to win, any major party, is going to have a hard time forming the next government. Is that how you see this?
Well, right now, the right can form a government on its own without any left-wing party, if that is what the president will entrust Netanyahu to do, or there can be a government with Likud and Zionist Union together under the leadership of Netanyahu, Herzog, or a rotation of the two.
All right, let's talk about Yesh Atid for just a minute. Right before we went on the air, you were telling me something very interesting, that, first of all, a lot of, right now, it's in the middle. It's not getting as many votes as it had the last election. But what do you see happening with Yesh Atid after the election?
What's been fascinating is that Yesh Atid has been going up in the polls consistently throughout the campaign. And they have not gone down. They've consistently been going up. Their own internal polls say that they would do even better, that they'd be getting about 15 seats. If they do, then Dov Lippman, chances are, is in the Knesset. He's number 17 on the list. 2 former ministers intend to quit if they are not ministers in the next government, and the chances of Yesh Atid being part of the coalition are almost nothing. So Dov could still be there.
Care to name those ministers?
After the election, let's see.
All right. Now, Israel Beitenu, of course, is coming in with a relatively insignificant, something between 5 to 7 mandates, depending on the poll. Does this indicate in any way the end of the political career for that party's chairman, who's also our finance minister, Victor Lieberman?
Oh, so our foreign minister, Victor Lieberman, still has the Russian immigrants on his side. That is probably enough to keep him in the Knesset, but just barely.
So what's going to happen with him? I mean, he's not doing as well as he'd like to be doing. And I saw a very interesting interview with him last night. All of his support seems to be eroding, even amongst the Russian immigrants.
So what you've been seeing is that when you're in trouble politically, you go to your base. That's what Lieberman is doing with Russian immigrants. That's what Naftali Bennett has been doing with settlers and the hardcore right. That's what Meretz is doing. Meretz unveiled a campaign today that basically said, save Meretz, don't let it die. And that's what you do when you've got your back against the wall. It should be interesting to see on election day what happens with these small parties. Will they eke by even though the electoral threshold has been raised?
Indeed. All right, Gil Hoffman, always good to have you with us. Thanks for coming in.
Pleasure.
Thank you. In other news, Egypt has been rocked by a wave of bombings over the past 24 hours. 3 Egyptian policemen were killed this afternoon and 3 others injured in a roadside attack on their armored vehicle in Sheikh Zuyed in the Sinai. And no one was hurt in an earlier explosion outside a cell phone store in Alexandria this morning. Another victim was killed and 5 people injured in the coastal city yesterday in a bombing outside of the French Carrefour supermarket giant. 4 others were hurt in a separate blast outside of the Moharam police station in the center of the coastal city, and there were no casualties in another bombing that was close to the Bab Shark police station. In addition, security forces disarmed a 4th incendiary device discovered outside of another local police compound. Since the toppling of former Islamist President Mohamed Morsi from power in 2013, militants have launched repeated attacks in Alexandria, Cairo, and the Sinai Peninsula. As part of the continuing crackdown on terrorism, security forces say that 70 jihadi insurgents were killed over this past week, and 118 others have been arrested. The declaration of allegiance by the Boko Haram terror group in Nigeria to the Islamic State is increasing concern over the rising coordination between jihadi movements across North Africa and the Middle East. In its campaign over the last 6 years to establish a radical Islamist state in northern Nigeria, Boko Haram has killed thousands and abducted hundreds of others. The government in the capital of Abuja is now appealing for greater international help to combat the terrorists, while residents express confidence that they will be eliminated.
Boko Haram has been a very difficult challenge to Nigeria. In fact, they are the insurgents in Nigeria. But now, as it is, now that they have declared their support for international terrorists, I think that it is time for the government of Nigeria now to mount up much of power, either from other neighboring countries, to be able to fight strongly the insurgents, the Boko Haram people, so that the war might be totally against them.
In Moscow, 5 people believed to have been involved in the assassination of opposition leader Boris Nemtsov have been arrested, and a 6th reportedly blew himself up when police arrived to detain him in Grozny. Russian officials say that one of the 2 suspects, who's already been formally charged, holds ties to the Kremlin-backed leader of Chechnya. The other 3 are expected to be charged in the coming days. The wave of arrests began on Saturday, and according to local media reports, most of the suspects are from the Muslim Caucasus region. Nemtsov was strolling with his girlfriend over a bridge in central Moscow when he was fatally shot 4 times in the back on February 27th. Around the world in 25 flight days? Well, that's the goal of 2 Swiss pilots who've undertaken the first such mission ever in a solar-powered airplane. Bertrand Piccard and André Borschberg say that they're making the unprecedented journey to promote clean technology in the aviation sector, and that they're going to take turns piloting the Solar Impulse 2, which took off from Abu Dhabi just after dawn yesterday. Engines of the 2,300-kilo aircraft are operating entirely on energy gleaned from the sun. Flying at a speed between 50 to 100 kilometers an hour, the adventure will cover 35,000 kilometers with stops in India, Myanmar, and China before crossing the Pacific Ocean. After sailing the skies above the United States and southern Europe, the remarkable expedition is due to culminate back in the United Arab Emirates sometime in July.
Yes, we are both in a level of excitement which is special, but excitement and also concentration and and simply happiness.
Bon voyage. Now turning to arts and entertainment, and the fourth Sounds of the Old City Festival will ring out later in the capital this evening, with events scheduled between 7 and 11 o'clock every night until Thursday. The festival offers the opportunity to experience musical traditions in the Old City, with visitors treated to a rare selection of ensembles and bands performing a wide-ranging variety of tunes on central stages and the ancient streets of the Jewish, Muslim, Armenian, and Christian quarters. All of the presentations are free of charge, so don't miss the Sounds of the Old City Festival right here in Jerusalem, beginning in just a few hours. Turning to sports, and what better time than International Women's Day for a top female athlete to be awarded Israel's first ever European medal in gymnastics. Hana Kanyazyeva Minenko took home the bronze medal in the triple jump and set a new national record with a distance of 14.49 meters. This was the second straight day of setting new precedents for the new immigrant sportswoman. Minenko set another record just a day earlier during the qualifying round. The 25-year-old native of Ukraine just recovered from an injury that kept her out of action most of last year, shortly after she placed sixth in the 2013 World Championship. Minenko called her victory an historic day for Israeli athletics and expressed her hope to be in top form at the next World Championships in Beijing this coming August. Staying with sports and moving to basketball, where the league leaders Maccabi Tel Aviv continue to roll. The team bounced back from its devastating EuroLeague loss at Red Star Belgrade to win the team's 16th straight league game, topping Maccabi Rishon LeZion 113-93. Solidly in first place, Maccabi pushed its record to 20-2. Hapoel Jerusalem is the only team that has the personnel to give Maccabi Tel Aviv a run for the title. Playing in Eilat, the capital hoopsters dominated the fourth quarter en route to an 86-76 road win. Led by Lior Eliyahu with 21 points, Jerusalem raised its record to 16-6 with a firm hold on second place. Taking a look at local finance, the shekel today put in a mixed performance while losing strength against the U.S. dollar, which today topped the 4-point mark, last seen in September 2012. Meanwhile, share prices on the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange were also mixed. Here's a look at the afternoon numbers. The IBA weather team says to enjoy our gorgeous, unseasonably warm weather. Tomorrow is going to start out much the same, although the conditions will change during the day, and we're likely to see local light rain by evening and throughout the night. Here's a look at the forecast over the next 24 hours. Thank you for being with us this afternoon. I'll be back at this desk tomorrow to bring you the latest breaking news from Israel. I'm Erin Viner, wishing you a wonderful evening, and shalom from Jerusalem.